They mocked him for marrying a poor black woman. Years later, they envied his life. Welcome, everyone. Today, we bring you a heartfelt story of resilience, love, and the quiet strength of unwavering support. Journey with us into the lives of Jack and Mia, a couple whose dreams and devotion not only uplifted each other, but transformed a community. Get ready to be inspired by a tale of hope, empathy, and enduring love. In the quiet, picturesque town of Glenbrook, a modest diner tucked along a winding road served as both the heart of the community and the pride of its owner. Jack. He was the kind of person who saw dreams not just as distant stars, but as attainable beacons. His modest establishment, Jack's Diner, was always filled with the welcoming aroma of freshly brewed coffee and sizzling burgers. In that little spot, Jack poured all his effort, his vision, and his dreams. It was during a particularly brisk autumn evening that Jack's life took an unexpected turn. As he wiped his hands on his apron, satisfied with another day's work, he glanced up at the sound of the diner's bell. In walked a woman he'd never seen before, her eyes carrying both warmth and resilience. She stepped in with quiet confidence, her coat frayed at the edges, but worn with grace, as if it were a badge of honor earned through resilience. She approached the counter, meeting Jack's gaze with a slight, nervous smile that held a spark of hope. "Welcome to Jack's Diner." Jack greeted her warmly, his voice gentle and inviting. "What can I get for you?" "A coffee, please," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack noted her poise, an understated grace, and found himself intrigued. As he poured her coffee, Jack struck up a conversation, learning her name was Rachel. She was new to Glenbrook, having recently moved with aspirations as grand as the town's rolling hills and open skies. She dreamed of becoming a model. It was a hope she held close to her heart, even if it seemed distant and difficult to reach. Jack listened, captivated by her ambition and the earnest conviction in her voice. From that night on, Rachel became a regular at the diner. Jack would often close up late just to sit and talk with her, offering her a warm meal and company. She spoke with such passion about her dreams and her journey, about the moments that had both shaped her and challenged her. Through their conversations, Jack came to understand the resilience and strength that lay beneath her gentle smile. Rachel shared with him memories of her childhood, growing up surrounded by countless hurdles, yet always looking forward with hope. Despite the setbacks, the rejections, and the loneliness of following a path fraught with uncertainties, she held her dream tightly, unwilling to let it slip away. One evening, as they walked together through the quiet streets of Glenbrook, Jack sensed a sadness in her eyes. Rachel looked up at the starlit sky and sighed, her voice tinged with doubt. "Jack, you're so kind to me," she said softly, glancing down. "But I don't know if I belong here in your world. You have this wonderful diner, respect from everyone, and me, well, I'm still chasing a dream that might never come true." Jack stopped, turning to face her with unwavering sincerity. "Rachel," he said, his voice steady, "your dream is what makes you extraordinary. It's what drew me to you in the first place. Don't ever doubt your worth. We all belong wherever our dreams take us." Her eyes softened, glistening with unshed tears. "But what if I fail?" she whispered. Jack reached for her hand, his touch gentle yet firm. "I'll be here, no matter what. You're not alone in this journey anymore." As days turned into weeks, their friendship deepened, blossoming into something neither had fully anticipated. They found solace in each other, and though the world around them was quick to judge and misunderstand, they held on to the quiet moments, the shared dreams, and the understanding that was beginning to grow between them. In a town where whispers traveled fast and judgment came easily, Jack knew they were likely the topic of conversation for many. But as he looked at Rachel, he knew it didn't matter. What mattered was the kindness in her heart, her unwavering spirit, and the joy he felt in her presence. In Rachel, he saw not just a dreamer, but a partner in life's unpredictable dance. And as he closed the diner one night, his heart felt fuller, his future brighter, knowing he was no longer walking his path alone, Over the next few weeks, Jack and Rachel's lives intertwined in a way that felt both natural and extraordinary. Jack, who had spent years pouring his soul into his small diner, began to see the world through Rachel's eyes, a world of possibility and ambition, albeit uncertain. Her presence was a quiet but undeniable force, igniting something new in him, a sense of wonder he hadn't felt since he first opened his diner. Despite the warmth of their connection, whispers had begun circulating through Glenbrook. In a town like this, everyone knew each other, and news, or gossip, had a way of reaching everyone's ears. Jack was no stranger to Glenbrook's close-knit community and its judgments. Some of his oldest friends, like Mike, had shared concerns about Rachel's ambitious dreams, suggesting that she'd never make it and that Jack was letting himself be swept into something too big for their small town. One late afternoon, Mike leaned across the counter, casting Jack a look of concern. "Jack, I just don't understand what you see in all this modeling talk. Glenbrook is, well, it's simple, down to earth. What if she gets hurt chasing something so unpredictable?" Jack felt a flicker of frustration but kept his tone steady. "Rachel's dreams are just as real as anything here. Mike, she's got more determination than most people I know." Mike shook his head, sighing, but he didn't press further. It was clear that Jack's loyalty and admiration for Rachel ran deep. As they closed the diner for the day, Jack couldn't shake the sting of his friend's words, but he was resolute in his feelings. Rachel wasn't just a dreamer. She was someone who inspired him to look beyond what was known and familiar. One evening, as the sky turned to shades of lavender and gold, Jack and Rachel took a stroll along Glenbrook's quiet streets. The world around them felt hushed, with the only sounds being the soft crunch of their footsteps on the gravel path and the occasional rustle of leaves in the breeze. Rachel's gaze was distant, her usual vibrant spirit dimmed. Jack gently took her hand, sensing the weight she carried. "What's on your mind, Rachel?" he asked softly. She paused, a sigh escaping her. "It's just sometimes I feel like I'm trying so hard, pushing against walls that never seem to give. I've auditioned at every possible agency around here, and it's the same story. Not the right look, not the right fit. It feels like a constant reminder that I don't belong in this dream." Jack felt his heart ache, wishing he could erase her doubt. "Rachel, I don't think I've ever known anyone as resilient as you," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "You've faced rejection after rejection, but you keep going. That's something most people can't say about themselves." Rachel's lips curved into a small, wistful smile. "But what if I'm just being foolish? What if everyone else is right, and I'm just wasting my time?" Jack pulled her closer, his voice unwavering. "Rachel, even if this dream takes you to the edges of your own strength, it's worth it. You're worth it, and I'll be here, no matter what." As they stood under the stars, Rachel looked at him with a mix of gratitude and vulnerability. "Thank you, Jack. I don't think I could keep going without you." In that moment, Jack realized just how deep his feelings for her had become. It wasn't just admiration for her dreams. It was love, rooted in understanding, empathy, and a desire to see her flourish. He knew then that he would stand beside her, facing whatever challenges came their way, for as long as she needed him. Yet, as they shared that quiet promise, both of them knew that the journey ahead wouldn't be easy. Glenbrook was a town that held tight to tradition, and their relationship, as unconventional as it was in the eyes of their community, was bound to stir both attention and judgment. But Jack found comfort in Rachel's unwavering spirit and the warmth of her presence beside him. Whatever lay ahead, he was ready to face it, grounded in the bond they had forged and the love that had taken root so unexpectedly. And as they walked back through the quiet streets of Glenbrook, Jack felt a renewed sense of purpose, a quiet certainty that together, they could weather whatever storms lay ahead. As the weeks unfolded, whispers in Glenbrook grew louder, and the stares became more pointed. Yet, in the midst of the town's watchful gaze, Jack and Rachel found themselves growing closer. They cherished the simplicity of shared moments, a quiet evening walk, a meal enjoyed after the diner had closed, or even just the warmth of each other's company as the world outside grew more uncertain. Jack knew that many in town questioned their relationship, often finding their union baffling. He would overhear remarks from customers, polite on the surface, yet laced with disbelief. And though he brushed these off, he could feel their weight. For every approving nod he received, there was an equal measure of doubt cast in Rachel's direction. One evening, Jack's mother invited him over for their regular Sunday dinner, and he arrived with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Although his mother had never been openly disapproving of Rachel, Jack sensed her discomfort whenever he brought her name up. Tonight, as they sat at the kitchen table, he felt the question lingering on her lips. "Honey," she began softly, folding her hands, "I just want to make sure. Are you certain about Rachel? You have such a wonderful life here with the diner. And her dreams, well, they're difficult." Jack looked down, taking a moment to gather his thoughts. "Mom, Rachel's dreams are part of who she is. I see her passion, her drive. It's what makes her extraordinary to me." His mother's eyes softened, but he could still see the worry in them. "I just don't want you to get hurt. Jack, this town, you know how people talk." Jack met her gaze, his own resolve unwavering. "I know, but I also know that Rachel's heart is full of kindness and strength. She's faced more challenges than anyone I know, and she keeps going. I can't imagine my life without her." That evening, as he walked back through the familiar streets, Jack felt a mix of pride and sorrow. He knew his mother's concern came from love, but he wished she could see Rachel as he did. She was more than her dreams. She was someone whose spirit had captivated him in a way he could never fully explain. The next morning at the diner, he couldn't help but feel the stares of some regulars, as if his life choices were up for debate along with the day's specials. But he forced a smile, filling orders and making conversation, his thoughts always drifting back to Rachel. She was his light, his reminder that there was more to life than fitting neatly into others' expectations. Later that evening, he shared all of this with Rachel, who listened quietly, her eyes reflective but understanding. "Jack," she whispered, taking his hand, "I know this isn't easy. If it ever gets too much." But Jack stopped her, shaking his head. "Rachel, I made my choice, and I wouldn't change it for anything." And with that, their hands remained tightly clasped, their unspoken promise stronger than any words they could say. As autumn settled over Glenbrook, Jack and Rachel's relationship grew deeper, more profound, blossoming like the quiet, enduring beauty of the changing leaves. Each day brought new challenges, but they faced them together, finding comfort in the strength they shared. Yet, it wasn't long before the whispers of judgment that had once only simmered in the background became more vocal, finding their way into their lives in ways they hadn't anticipated. One afternoon, as Jack was wiping down tables at the diner, his longtime friend, Tom, stopped by. Tom, who had known Jack since childhood, pulled up a chair at the counter, watching Jack work with a quiet intensity. After a few moments of silence, Tom finally spoke. "Jack, I know this isn't my place," he began slowly, his voice carrying the weight of an uncomfortable truth. "But a lot of folks around here, well, they're talking. They don't think this thing with Rachel is good for you." Jack set down the cloth in his hand, feeling a pang of disappointment mixed with a quiet frustration. He looked at Tom, seeing in his expression a blend of concern and a lingering hesitancy. "Tom, if you knew her, truly knew her, you'd see she's an incredible person. Her spirit, her dreams, they're beautiful," Jack said, his voice resolute. Tom looked away, rubbing the back of his neck. "I'm sure she's a good person, Jack, but people here, they don't understand why you're so invested. They think she's got her head in the clouds. And you, well, they think you're going to get hurt." Jack took a breath, keeping his frustration at bay. "Tom, Rachel's dreams might seem distant, even impossible, but she has a heart that never gives up. She believes in herself, even when the world around her doesn't. I can't turn my back on that, not when I know how much it means to her." Tom was quiet for a moment, then sighed, giving Jack a nod before standing to leave. "Just be careful, Jack," he said softly. "I don't want to see you regret anything. That evening, as Jack walked through the dimly lit streets on his way to meet Rachel, his thoughts lingered on Tom's words. He knew the town's judgment stemmed from a place of caution, perhaps even a well-meaning concern, but it was hard to reconcile these sentiments with the deep, unwavering affection he felt for Rachel. When he finally reached her, she was waiting for him on the porch of her small apartment, her face lighting up as soon as she saw him. She must have sensed the weight on his shoulders because, as they embraced, she held him a little longer, her arms comforting and warm. "Rough day?" she asked, her voice soft and understanding. Jack nodded, then looked into her eyes, feeling an overwhelming sense of clarity. "Rachel, there's something I need you to know," he began, his voice steady but full of emotion. "No matter what anyone says, no matter how hard it gets, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Rachel's eyes softened, her hand finding his as they stood together in the quiet, enveloped by the deepening night. And in that moment, without words, they both understood that their bond was stronger than the doubts cast by others, a bond built on faith, resilience, and a love that refused to yield. As winter crept into Glenbrook, Jack and Rachel's bond only seemed to grow stronger, weathering the chill of the season and the quiet but persistent scrutiny of those around them. They embraced each other's company, finding warmth in their shared moments. From long conversations in the dim glow of the diner to late-night walks under the quiet sky. However, the weight of the town's silent judgment grew heavier for Rachel. Although she tried to focus on her modeling aspirations, the rejections from agencies and the skepticism of the townsfolk began to gnaw at her confidence. She would come to Jack with eyes filled with a hopeful resolve, yet he saw the sadness that lingered behind her smile. One evening, after another disappointing audition, Rachel arrived at the diner long after closing. Her shoulders slumped as she entered. Jack was wiping down the counters, and he immediately looked up, sensing her weariness. "Rough day?" he asked gently, putting the cloth down and coming around to meet her. Rachel managed a small smile. "They said I wasn't quite what they were looking for," she replied, her voice soft and resigned. "I tried. Jack, I really thought this one might be it." He reached out, pulling her into a comforting embrace, feeling the weight of her frustration as she leaned against him. "You're everything they're looking for. They just don't know it yet," he murmured, his voice filled with reassurance. "Rachel, you got so much talent. I wish they could see what I see." She laughed softly, though there was a touch of bitterness in her tone. "Sometimes, I wonder if maybe everyone's right, if I'm just chasing something that was never meant for me." Jack gently held her by the shoulders, looking into her eyes with a steady gaze. "Rachel, dreams aren't supposed to be easy. They're supposed to push us, challenge us, and make us question everything. That's what makes them worth fighting for." She nodded, though he could see the doubt still flickering within her. Jack wanted nothing more than to lift that weight, to show her that her worth wasn't tied to the acceptance or validation of others. As they sat together in one of the diner booths, Jack reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "Rachel, I know it feels like the world is against you right now. I see how hard you're trying, and I know how much it hurts when people don't understand your dream. But I'm here, and I believe in you more than anyone else ever could." Rachel squeezed his hand, her eyes brightening as his words filled her with renewed strength. "Thank you, Jack. You don't know how much it means to me to have you by my side." They sat in comfortable silence for a few moments, letting the quiet understanding between them say what words couldn't. Jack knew that Rachel's journey would be filled with challenges, and he was determined to stand beside her. No matter the cost, she was more than just a dreamer. She was someone who had shown him what it meant to believe, even when the odds seemed impossible. In the days that followed, Jack's unwavering support gave Rachel a sense of stability that she hadn't felt before. She pushed forward with her dreams, auditioning wherever she could, and Jack was there to cheer her on at every turn, his loyalty becoming the foundation of her renewed resolve. Then one evening, as they sat together on a bench under a blanket of stars, Rachel turned to him, her expression thoughtful. "Jack, I don't know what I did to deserve someone as kind as you," she whispered, her voice tinged with wonder. Jack smiled, taking her hand and holding it tightly. You don't have to deserve it. Rachel, I'm here because I want to be, because you're worth every moment. They sat quietly, hands intertwined, as the stars above seemed to shine a little brighter, casting a gentle glow over them. In that moment, Jack knew that their love was a choice, a quiet but powerful decision to stand by each other, to face the world together, and to let their hearts guide them forward through the uncertainty of whatever was yet to come. As spring approached, the cold began to thaw in Glenbrook, and with it, a sense of hope seemed to rekindle in Rachel's heart. She found herself surrounded by Jack's unwavering encouragement, which grounded her even during the most challenging moments. With each rejection she faced, Jack was there to remind her of her worth, offering a steadfast belief in her potential. And though she still felt the weight of the town's quiet judgment, Rachel began to embrace a growing resilience, an inner strength that only flourished with Jack's support. One afternoon, she arrived at the diner with a look of excitement in her eyes. Jack, who was busy serving customers, immediately noticed the shift in her energy. Once the rush settled, she made her way over to him, unable to contain her smile. What's got you so cheerful today? Jack asked, setting down his tray. Rachel held up a flyer, her grin widening. There's a local talent showcase happening next month. It's not a modeling job exactly, but it's an opportunity for me to perform and be seen. I think this might be a step forward. Jack's eyes lit up as he read the flyer. This is fantastic. Rachel, this is exactly the kind of thing that could get you noticed. He placed his hand on her shoulder, giving her an encouraging squeeze. You've got everything it takes to shine. The days that followed were filled with preparation. Rachel practiced her routine at every opportunity, determined to make an impact. Jack, as always, was by her side, watching with admiration as she perfected every detail. He knew how much this meant to her, and he wanted her to feel his presence as a source of strength. On the evening of the showcase, Jack could feel his own heart racing with anticipation as he took a seat among the crowd. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement, and he felt a swell of pride knowing that Rachel was about to step into the spotlight. When she finally appeared on stage, he watched as she took a deep breath, the audience quieting in anticipation. As Rachel began her performance, Jack could see the nervousness in her posture gradually melt away. She moved with grace and confidence, her passion radiating from every gesture and expression. In that moment, she was luminous, her strength and vulnerability intertwined to create something truly captivating. Jack's eyes never left her, and he realized how much she had grown since they first met. Despite the challenges she had faced, she had never let go of her dream. And now, here she was, embracing her journey with everything she had. When the performance ended, the crowd erupted in applause. Jack's heart swelled with pride as he watched Rachel bow, her face glowing with joy and relief. As she stepped off the stage, she found Jack waiting for her, his smile wide and his arms open. You were incredible, he whispered, wrapping her in a warm embrace. Every single person in that audience saw exactly what I've always seen in you. Rachel leaned into him, her heart pounding with excitement and gratitude. Thank you, Jack. I couldn't have done this without you. They left the venue hand in hand, the night air cool but refreshing, filled with the scent of blooming flowers and the quiet energy of new beginnings. As they walked, Rachel turned to Jack, her voice soft but filled with conviction. I've realized something tonight, she said. Even if I never reach the heights I dream of, even if the world never understands this dream of mine, it's all worth it, because I found something far more valuable than fame or success. Jack looked at her, a quiet understanding passing between them. And what's that? Rachel smiled, her gaze tender as she tightened her grip on his hand. I've found love, Jack. I've found someone who believes in me for who I am, not for what I can achieve. I can't imagine a greater gift than that. Jack felt his heart swell, and he gave her hand a gentle squeeze. Rachel, you've given me just as much. You've reminded me that dreams are worth chasing, that love is worth holding on to, no matter how hard it gets. As they walked together, their love felt like a quiet promise, a vow to stand by each other through every triumph and trial. They didn't need the world's approval. They only needed each other. And with that, they let the warmth of their shared dreams and the tenderness of their bond guide them forward into a future that, though uncertain, felt incredibly bright. In the weeks that followed, Rachel's confidence blossomed. The night of the talent showcase had given her a renewed sense of purpose, and she threw herself into her dream with a quiet but determined focus. Jack continued to be her steadfast supporter, watching her with pride as she faced every audition, every opportunity, and even every rejection with resilience. He could see that, more than ever, Rachel had begun to believe in herself, not just for the sake of her ambition, but for the strength she had found along the way. But as Rachel's determination grew, so did the challenges. Glenbrook was still a small town, one where ambition was often met with skepticism. The whispers about her choices and her relationship with Jack had not faded, and there were moments when the weight of those stares felt overwhelming. Jack could see it in her eyes when she came to the diner after a long day, sometimes tired, sometimes carrying the silent question of whether her efforts would ever bear fruit. One evening, as they sat together in the familiar corner booth of the diner, Rachel voiced her doubts. "Jack, I know I've been pushing forward, trying to stay strong, but some days, I wonder if I'm just wearing myself out." Jack listened, his eyes warm and understanding. "Rachel, you're building something incredible, not just for others to see, but for yourself. You're proving to yourself that no matter what anyone thinks, you have the courage to pursue what you love." She looked down, tracing the edge of the table with her fingertip, her expression softening. "I don't know if I would have made it this far without you." Jack reached out, covering her hand with his own. "Rachel, you've had this strength within you all along. I've only been here to remind you of it." They shared a smile, a quiet exchange of support that felt more solid than any words could express. As the days continued, they fell into a rhythm of shared dreams and daily encouragement. Jack being the steady presence she needed, and Rachel bringing a sense of purpose and adventure that kept Jack inspired. And then, one spring afternoon, the phone call came. Rachel answered, her voice tentative at first, then steadily growing more animated. She listened intently, her cheeks flushed with excitement as she replied, "Yes, absolutely. Thank you. I'll be there." When she hung up, her face lit up as she turned to Jack, unable to contain her joy. "Jack, they offered me a spot in a small fashion show in the city. It's not much, but it's a real opportunity. They saw my performance at the showcase and want to give me a chance." Jack's smile widened as he stood to embrace her, his pride evident in his eyes. "Rachel, this is exactly what you've been working for. I knew this moment would come." The days leading up to the show were a whirlwind of preparation. Jack watched as Rachel rehearsed her walk, choosing her outfits with a meticulous eye and practicing her poise until everything felt just right. Her dedication was inspiring, and Jack found himself marveling at her ability to transform her hopes into something so tangible. On the day of the show, Jack took the train into the city to be there for Rachel, his heart pounding with anticipation. As he entered the venue, he saw her backstage, surrounded by bustling stylists and models. She glanced his way, her eyes meeting his with a look that spoke volumes. In that brief exchange, he conveyed all his support, all the belief he had in her, and Rachel felt reassured in a way only he could provide. The show began, and Jack watched from the audience, captivated as Rachel took her first steps onto the runway. She moved with a grace and confidence that made her seem almost weightless, her presence filling the room. For Jack, the world seemed to fade away as he focused on her, seeing not just a model, but a woman who had fought for every step she was now taking. When the show ended, Rachel joined him in the audience, her face glowing with joy. "I did it," she whispered, as if still trying to believe it herself. Jack took her hands, his smile filled with pride and love. "Rachel, You were extraordinary. I've never been prouder." They left the venue hand in hand, feeling that they had reached a new milestone together. The night was alive with city lights, and as they walked back to the train station, Rachel looked at Jack, her eyes reflecting a quiet, fulfilled happiness. "Jack," she said, her voice soft but filled with meaning. "Whatever the future holds, I'll never forget this moment. I'll never forget how you believed in me when no one else did." Jack gave her hand a gentle squeeze. "And I'll never stop believing in you. Rachel, this is just the beginning." With that promise lingering in the air, they boarded the train back to Glenbrook, both of them filled with a sense of contentment and hope that only comes from facing challenges together and finding strength in each other's presence. As the train hummed softly on the journey back to Glenbrook, Jack and Rachel sat together in comfortable silence, hands entwined. The night outside was dark, speckled with the faint glow of stars, and within the cozy warmth of the train car, they shared a peaceful moment, each absorbed in their thoughts. Rachel, still radiant from her first successful show, looked out the window, her mind racing with possibilities. After a while, she turned to Jack, her eyes bright but reflective. "You know, Jack," she began softly, "I never thought I'd get here. Not just a show, but to a place where I feel seen. I feel like my dream isn't just some distant hope anymore. It's becoming real, thanks to you." Jack shook his head, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "Rachel, you've always had this dream within you. I'm just lucky enough to have been here to watch it grow." Rachel's expression softened. "Even when I was ready to give up, you were there. That means more to me than any applause or recognition." Jack's heart swelled as he took in her words. Over the past months, he had witnessed Rachel's unwavering dedication, the countless auditions, the rejections she bore with grace, and the quiet strength she showed after each setback. She had taught him as much about resilience as he had tried to offer her, and he couldn't help but admire the woman sitting beside him. The train slowed as it pulled into the station at Glenbrook, and they gathered their things, stepping onto the platform. The town was quiet, illuminated only by a few streetlights, casting a soft glow over the familiar buildings. They walked back toward Rachel's apartment, and Jack felt a peace settle over him as he looked at her, realizing how much his life had changed since she had first walked into his diner. As they approached her door, Rachel turned to him, hesitating for a moment before speaking. "Jack, have you ever thought about how much this town has shaped us? How it's been a part of every struggle and every triumph?" Jack nodded, understanding the weight of her words. Glenbrook had been both a source of comfort and a challenge. The townspeople and their opinions had shaped their lives, but it had also been a place where they'd found each other, where their story had taken root. "Sometimes I think about what it would be like to leave it all behind, to start somewhere fresh, where we could just be ourselves without anyone's judgment," she confessed, her voice soft. "But then I remember, Glenbrook is home. No matter what happens, it's part of who we are." Jack took her hands, feeling the warmth of her touch. "Rachel, wherever you want to go, whatever you want to do, I'm with you. I don't need anything else. As long as we're together, that's home enough for me." Rachel smiled, her gaze tender. "Thank you, Jack, for everything." They stood there for a moment, wrapped in the quiet stillness, each feeling the unspoken promise that bound them together. In the weeks that followed, life resumed its steady rhythm, but something felt different. Rachel continued to chase her modeling dreams, and while there were still challenges, her confidence grew with each small success. The townsfolk, too, began to soften their attitudes. Where once there had been judgmental stares and whispers, now there was a quiet acceptance, a hesitant but growing respect for Rachel and the path she had chosen. One afternoon, as Jack was serving the last few customers in the diner, he noticed Mrs. Thompson, an older woman who had once been among the harshest critics of his relationship with Rachel. Sitting by the window, she watched Jack with a quiet intensity, as though waiting for the right moment to speak. When the last patron left, Mrs. Thompson approached the counter. "Jack," she began, her voice surprisingly gentle, "I just wanted to say, I think you were right. About Rachel. About everything. She hesitated. Her face softened with sincerity. She's proven us all wrong. And I can see now that she's brought out something wonderful in you, too. Jack was taken aback, but he offered her a warm smile. Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. I know it hasn't been easy for everyone to understand. But Rachel, she's one of the strongest people I've ever known. Mrs. Thompson nodded, her eyes filled with something that resembled a quiet admiration. You're both lucky to have each other, she murmured, almost to herself, before turning to leave. As Jack watched her walk out, he felt a sense of peace settle over him. The approval of others had never mattered to him nearly as much as Rachel's happiness. Yet he couldn't deny the comfort that came with knowing that even the most stubborn hearts could soften. That love and perseverance could, in time, win people over. Later that night, as he shared the story with Rachel, she laughed softly, her eyes shimmering with gratitude. It's amazing, isn't it? She mused. How much people can change when they're given time. Jack wrapped an arm around her, his voice filled with quiet conviction. We've shown them what love can do, Rachel, and I think that's more powerful than anything else. As time went on, Rachel's career began to grow, each small opportunity leading to another. And soon she was receiving invitations to larger shows and casting calls in the city. With each new milestone, she gained confidence, and her sense of self became more deeply rooted in both her accomplishments and the unwavering support of those who truly cared about her. Glenbrook, once a town filled with skeptics, had slowly transformed into a place of quiet pride. One evening, as Rachel returned from a shoot in the city, she stepped into Jack's diner, her expression filled with excitement. Jack looked up from behind the counter, instantly sensing the joy in her eyes. He walked over, his face breaking into a warm smile. Guess what? Rachel whispered, barely able to contain herself. I've been invited to participate in a showcase during Fashion Week. Jack's eyes widened, his heart swelling with pride. Rachel, that's incredible. He reached for her hands, pulling her into a hug, and she laughed, wrapping her arms around him tightly. It was moments like these that reminded Jack just how far they had come, how much they had overcome together to reach this point. They sat down in a quiet corner of the diner, and Rachel shared the details of the event, her voice filled with awe and a hint of disbelief. It's such a big opportunity. Jack, I know it's just the beginning, but I can't believe I'm actually going to be part of something like this. Jack smiled, his voice calm but filled with conviction. You've worked so hard. Rachel, this is exactly where you're meant to be, and I'll be there in the audience, cheering you on every step of the way. The weeks leading up to the event were filled with anticipation and preparation. Jack made adjustments to his diner schedule, determined not to miss this pivotal moment in Rachel's journey. He spent hours watching her rehearse, admiring the dedication she poured into every detail, and offered gentle encouragement whenever nerves threatened to overwhelm her. Finally, the night of the showcase arrived, and Jack found himself seated in a grand hall, surrounded by the glamour and excitement of the event. The lights dimmed, and as the music began, he felt a surge of pride that made his heart pound. When Rachel stepped onto the runway, she moved with such elegance and assurance that she seemed to transform into a vision of her dream made real. Jack watched in awe. Every step she took a testament to her resilience and strength. She wasn't just walking a runway. She was walking the path they had paved together, a journey that had defied every doubt and challenge thrown their way. When the show concluded, Jack found Rachel backstage, her face beaming with pride and joy. She ran to him, her arms wrapping around his shoulders, and they stood together in a quiet embrace, neither needing to say a word. In that moment, Jack realized that their love had become a foundation for everything they had built, supporting her dreams and his as one. Rachel, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. You were perfect. They walked out into the city lights, hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next, knowing they would always have each other's unwavering belief to guide them forward. The success of the showcase marked a turning point for Rachel, and in the days that followed, her phone buzzed constantly with new opportunities. Casting directors, photographers, and even a few notable designers reached out, expressing interest in her work. Each day brought something new, and with each call, Rachel's excitement grew. Yet she remained humble, grounded in the journey she had traveled to reach this point. One evening, as Jack prepared for the evening shift at the diner, Rachel stopped by with an envelope in her hand. Her face lit up with an emotion he hadn't seen before, something deeper than excitement, almost a sense of awe. "Jack," she said, holding out the envelope with a slight tremble in her hand. "I've got a contract offer, a real one, with a designer based in New York. They want me for their upcoming campaign." Jack took the envelope from her, glancing over the details, his heart swelling with pride. "Rachel, this is amazing. You're on your way to achieving everything you dreamed of." Rachel's smile was soft, her eyes meeting his with a quiet gratitude. "Jack, none of this would have happened without you. I'll never forget how you stood by me when no one else did." Jack shook his head, a gentle smile on his lips. "Rachel, all of this is because of your strength, your resilience. I'm just grateful I got to walk beside you." They shared a moment of quiet understanding, the kind of moment that held a lifetime of meaning in the unspoken. For them, success had never been about fame or recognition. It had always been about the journey, about growing together through every high and low. As the weeks went by, Glenbrook began to take notice of Rachel's accomplishments. People who had once looked at her with doubt now watched with admiration, their voices softened by a respect that had taken root gradually. Over time, Jack's Diner became something of a local legend, not only for its comfort and charm, but for being the place where Rachel's journey had begun. Then one evening, as Jack was closing up, he noticed a group of familiar faces gathering at the door. His old friends, some of whom had once questioned his relationship with Rachel, stood there, looking slightly uncertain. One of them, Tom, stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Jack," Tom began, his voice hesitant. We wanted to apologize for not believing in you and Rachel. It's clear now how wrong we were." Jack regarded them with a calm expression, his heart steady. He felt no resentment, only a quiet understanding. "Thank you, Tom. We've all been on our own journeys, haven't we?" Tom nodded, looking visibly relieved. "You and Rachel, you've shown us what it means to follow your heart. It's humbling." Jack accepted their apology with a gentle nod, feeling a sense of closure that brought with it a surprising peace. As he locked up the diner that night, he thought about how far he and Rachel had come, not just as individuals, but as a couple who had inspired change in others simply by staying true to themselves. Later, when he shared the encounter with Rachel, she listened with a quiet smile, her hand resting gently on his. "Forgiveness," she whispered, "is a beautiful thing. It's one of the gifts this journey has given us." Jack squeezed her hand, his heart full, and it's one we'll carry forward, together. In the stillness of that night, they felt the enduring strength of their love, a love that had not only transformed them, but had touched the lives of those around them, reminding everyone that dreams, when nurtured with empathy and faith, can bring light to even the most unexpected places. Thank you for joining us on this journey of love, resilience, and forgiveness. Jack and Mia's story reminds us that true strength lies in supporting each other through every challenge, and that, together, we can overcome the doubts of the world. We hope their tale has inspired you to cherish the bonds that lift you up. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories that celebrate the power of empathy and enduring love.